I didn't wake up early today, so I skipped out on morning period. So first period, I attended my class and I learned about present progressive in Spanish. I'm great to say that I get what it means. The teacher taught us the ando, yendo, and yendo endings, and that it is mostly the same for all Spanish verbs, depending on whether it's a stem changer or not. The teacher posted all the assignments for the week so I could do them all at once, or I'll distribute it across the day since it's only about 4 days this week. Second period, we played badminton. It was neither fun or boring. Like I said before, I don't really feel good or happy or bad in that class because I don't really feel anything with anyone there. No true friends there, I guess. Third period, we continued on heat transfer. This time, we experimented with dye and how it interacts and fills itself in a cup of water, depending on how the water is. We experimented with water, water with ice, and cold water without ice. So we tested out the food dye and how long the food dye takes to fill up the water cup. And it was interesting at that point that I didn't finish it, so we continue that tomorrow. And obviously, I did have a few interactions. There was like two girls, two boys that questioned me since I did end up rinsing the water cup in a little bit of a violent way. Like instead of like pouring it down calmly, I just ended up like going up to the large sink and then just throwing it out. Right. So some people did question me on that. And fourth period, we learned more about Gandhi and his protests about salt and its use and how the British rescinded a law about it in 1931. And fifth, lunch period, mostly work, and then big credit to one of my friends guys told me about the link leader application. I thought they didn't release until much later on. Unfortunately, on my Canvas app, they didn't release there. So thanks for letting me know. I already did make the application for that. And then typically, like me, I forget everything. So the application asked me for my fifth period class. I like to do things more efficiently than precisely. So I took the precise route and then finished it at home. And then outside events, as I was checking after school in the areas for my GPA and stuff, I didn't know like my first semester was actually straight A's. I had a 4.0 GPA, technically 3.78 now, but it connects back because there was one time during this year I lied to my mom that I had straight A's. I was trying to grab her attention to beg her not to bring me on a trip, but oddly enough, I guess that lie was true. I really did have straight A's. So credit to other random two people that I talked to if you guys are watching this right now. Anyways, this period, this gets interesting again. We filled out annotations about a British newspaper talking about the evacuation of civilians due to World War II. Now it contradicted itself because some others saw that evacuation as some sort of adventure. And a side conversation that I heard about here, I do need to put out some nuances, is that there was one of the girls who had a boy who liked her, but the girl's parents were strict and completely barred her from dating at all. The teacher agreed, even her own mother stopped her from dating back when the teacher was in high school before, and that the girl deserves a true boy, the one that I'm talking about, as someone who cares, and not someone who is bitter at rejection or says something else other than, respecting the decision. My incomplete conclusion is this, is that in the Enlightenment is that parents have legitimacy in situations like this by the actions that they do. This plays out exactly like that, obviously with a few nuances. This is protective intent right here that the parents are limiting her from dating because there are toxic boys. There are toxic girls that I do not want anyone ever dating. That protection is valid, but what I'm afraid about it is that pinning it down completely is that I'm afraid if these protections become too limiting for the girl later on as she grows older, she might make the excuse of waiting until later, waiting until after the opportunity, and then she might not end up dating at all. Or let's say her freedoms in dating later on might be limited like a chokehold, unlike border control between relationships and friendships. And the difference between border control between relationships and friendships to a chokehold is that border control doesn't limit, it regulates, and chokeholds simply stop everything because it's fear. Then again, it's the only nuance that I call out here, but I understand why a lot of parents would limit sons and daughters from dating now in high school. I've encountered toxic people before that, no one should date at all. As I said again, I'm not making this a goose chase. There could have been a bad event that occurred to the parents or maybe to the daughter that gave them reason to be saying this right now. As I said, this is that this still remains open to debate and interpretation. Now we're keeping that side channel open. Big shout out to the teacher at the end of the period though, because last week I did tell you guys I left my 27 cents in the class. And then, well, apparently first period took one of those 25 cents, and now apparently tomorrow she'll be chewing them out because someone wasted their integrity for 25 cents. And to add on to the humor joke, I told them that I hope the pennies don't get stolen either. And then, anyways, workload is already getting high. I didn't finish up a no writing assignment. I do have a bunch of Spanish assignments, so I'm going to complete those as soon as I can. Sixth period, I got to work in my math book and did a lot more about parabolas. I did go off and veer off of the teacher's direction quite a few times, going my own way, but eventually I followed the teacher's lead instead and managed to barely finish it on time. Apparently, a lot of the people failed the math quiz. The teacher was quite disappointed. Keep in mind, I was a former class in a former math teacher where the teacher was more of DIY, do it yourself. If you need help, you go up to him. He teaches 15 to 20 minutes the first half, and then 30 minutes are all of yours. 30 to 15 minutes, it's all of yours to do as you wish. It worked well for me because I could structure myself. I could complete parabolas and calculate certain types of problems. But other people use those 30 minutes on other things in that former math class. That's why they're getting an F now because when we add structure and other things, anyways, post dismissal, I talked to the same senior girl. I told her I'm planning to become a link leader next year and that we hit off a really interesting conversation. Again, I won't reveal all details for privacy reasons. And we made a theory about volleyball, basketball, and a lot of other sports. Is that if the school during lunch period gave free time for all students to move around, play sports, play volleyball, play basketball, any sport like pickleball, anything, then interesting thought experiments. Because in my view, now a lot of friends and newcomers I've seen myself, they've been abandoned by friend groups who love to rotate, not because they're evil, but because it's a structural mismatch of continuity versus rotation. Like imagine that lunch period, you're given a basket of mixed assortment, 300 amounts of volleyballs, basketballs, ping pong balls, golf, pickleballs. Let's say even other things too, even the Mesopotamian tag that the teachers teach at PE. About all the sports that you would like the niche ones, say the gym's open too. I say the outer soccer field is also open. And my theory about this is that if we add this during lunch period, I believe that structured gameplay in sports, if people love to do it, it forces both rotators and continuity people alike to stick together and form connections. I believe it creates safe versions of continuity and rotator peoples, unlike the ones that we see today at lunch. Because once we move from sport to sport, connected friend groups, because everyone you get to know each other, when you get to talk to each other, switch sports, everybody gets to know a piece about each other. It's not just all fragmented. People who stick at the same place, stick at the same place. People who rotate at the same place, but everybody knows each other, at least somewhat. And continuity has less isolation, while rotators gain much more, um, stacked up effort with friend groups. Find this with clubs that open during up lunch. Let's say Jesus Club, for example. And say certain school buildings are free to roam, especially if you're in for academic activities such as clubs or tutoring. It's kind of like a unified student union between two things, social plate tectonics and continuity. They exist like lotion and sunscreen. One must be applied first and then the other in the proper order. And I say this because sports is kind of like a connector. It acts as a bridge because instead of like talking to friend groups up front, you risk a lot of that hesitation. But sports itself acts kind of like a bridge. Like you get to connect with people by enjoying a sport that all of you guys like. And in this theory is that it is beautiful on paper and academically, socially. It's also beautiful, but it's a nightmare in enforcement and security protocols. With or without the cool sports metaphor, the biggest thing that I realize is that friend groups aren't closed because they're evil. It's because they know that the outside is unsafe. Like, like outside of the fragmentation, outside local groups, like it is unsafe. But when we connect with other groups nearby, theoretically, if it decided to connect with other groups nearby, it becomes less unsafe. Do that again, and you create unity, not fragmentation as we see today. Instead of connecting an all girls friend groups and all boys friend group, you get to connect them through the peripherals. You get to connect through the sports, through clubs. You get to connect them like that. And then you connect these together, connect. Then you find direct routes between the trans friend group, for example, and then the all boys friend group, and then to many other places. Because it rewrites partially. Remember, like the trinary group, and that was rejected from. Obviously, I still hold the same enlightenment outcome. They gotta recognize newcomers. They also recognize is that they know it's unsafe outside their clique. There is risk. And truly, no one in this case would truly be a singular continuity person or a singular rotator person. Everyone would have a balanced mix of both in theory. When connecting friend groups in this kind of theory right here, you're not combining slums, poor cities, or homeless houses. You're combining towns and roads and routes, highways. And metaphorically, that lead to both Los Angeles and Las Vegas back and forth, along with their own inner counties. In a metaphor here, you're essentially connecting the friend group that's all the way in the middle of the lunch group and all the way to the one that's located near the wellness center. The way and back, far distance, but you still got a route. And 60 to 70% of people to 80% would have a friend group by then, feeling truly accepted and not just there. Because when you add sports, you add connection. It's not that everyone should mix and be friends, obviously. It's rather that both types, rotator and continuity types of people, and the ones who are both, have routes to travel. Remember, it also rewrites because remember the library girl that I had to leave and I told a story about? If there was a shared activity, she could have well on been in a friend group that I would have never been in, or maybe just still chilling and doing art in the club. Not making assumptions here, all people to their own interests. I continued on the conversation, with the senior girl out of this theory. Another thing happened, except about that theory, about moving places and what it feels like to be new. She came here as someone who just moved. So what I'm asking everyone here is that, what do you feel if you moved places before? What do you feel as it is like to start over, to have new friends, to abandon your old friends in a new high school, being in a new place where not many know you and you having to start from scratch? And how does it feel? What troubles?